Ahoj! Vítejte na mém kanále Czech by Zuzka, kde vám pomocí angličtiny vysvětluju českou gramatiku. This video is going to have a little similar topic to the last week's topic. I'm going to talk about to again, but this time as a part of colloquial language. I mentioned that in my previous video that sometimes we use to and it doesn't have a real translation, but it has its place. It makes the language more colloquial. Last week I gave an example with these pampelišky, dandelions. Co to máš v kapse? What have you got there in your pocket? Co to máš v kapse? To mám pampelišky. Which could work the same way even without to. You could also ask, co máš v kapse? And also I remember last year when I made a video on the preposition z, I gave this phrase as an example. To jsem z toho jelen, or to jsem z toho blázen, which means I'm going crazy from this. Like, I can't believe this, I am so confused. Literally, it means I am a fool, I am a deer from this. And to doesn't have to be there again. You could just say, jsem z toho blázen. I'm so confused from this. But when you put to jsem z toho blázen, it sounds more colloquial. If you say it this way, it's kind of dry. It's missing something. And I want to give you a taste of colloquial language, and one of the best ways to see this in action is through a Czech movie. So, at the weekend, I watched a Czech comedy from 1983. It's a Czech classic. It's called Slunce, seno, jahody. And it's this a slightly exaggerated Czech comedy that tells a story about an ordinary small village where everybody knows each other and there are gossips, fights, love affairs and things like that. You know, this movie might be a bit outdated, but most Czech people love to watch this comedy and they know the lines from the movie. So I chose a couple of short phrases from this movie and I'm gonna play them for you. Let's see the first one.
Ne, to si se mnou nedělejte žádný výdaje, něco si koupím v jednotě.
Ani nápad.
In this short scene we heard, to si se mnou nedělejte žádný výdaje. The young man refused to spend any money on him. He wanted to be polite and he didn't want any coffee or milk, any drinks. Don't spend any money on me. To has no translation. We could easily leave it out, except we would have to change the word order. We would have to say, nedělejte si se mnou výdaje. Or if he wanted to emphasize with me, like don't spend any money on me, you could also have this at the beginning, but you would say se mnou si nedělejte žádný výdaje. By the way, žádný is also in the colloquial language because in proper Czech it would be žádné výdaje. Výdaje literally means expenses and it's in plural. If you say se mnou si nedělejte žádný výdaje nebo nedělejte si se mnou žádný výdaje, it is okay. It makes exactly the same point, but it just sounds a little bit proper and that's what we don't want. Let's see another scene.
To nestihne vybělit, to se vsaď předsedo.
We heard, to se vsaď předsedo. You bet, Mr. Chairman. To se vsaď. Vsadit se means to bet. And we could easily say vsaď se. Again, we have to switch the order because se comes second. To se vsaď or vsaď se. And it's the same case. Vsaď se means you bet. But if you say to se vsaď, like you bet, like it sounds better. Another scene.
Podívat. To víš, lepší partie.
To víš, lepší partie. You know, a better match. And we could easily say víš, like you know, but it is just not right. Víš. It's missing something. Další.
To bude lejt. Co abych to skopila, co říkáte velebnosti?
To bude late. It's gonna rain. Late also is very colloquial. It means to pour. But even if she said to bude pršet, To is still a sign of colloquial language. You could also say bude lejt, bude pršet, and more colloquial, more interesting, more vivid is to bude lejt. A ještě jedna.
Prosím tě, ale hlavně už přestaň brečet.
To neznáš vencu. Je tvrdohlavé jako bej.
To neznáš vencu. Huh? You don't know Venca. That's a name. He's as stubborn as a bull. To neznáš vencu. And again, we could say neznáš vencu. When you look at these sentences, you see that to is at the beginning, which is very common, but it doesn't have to be at the beginning. So now that I have these sentences written here, it's important to mention that when we use this pronoun, which doesn't have an actual translation in the language, is always in the singular form and in the neuter. It's always to. You cannot say ta or tohle. It doesn't work. So you use to. And you can also notice that it goes together with a verb often. It's next to a verb. Now, let's see an example where to is not at the beginning. We're going to leave this movie now, but if you're interested in watching it, it's about 1 hour 20 minutes. It's also available on YouTube, and you will find the link below the video. Unfortunately, the movie doesn't have subtitles in Czech or in English, so I would recommend this for a higher level. But you can watch it. If you read what the movie is about, then you can have an idea what's going on and practice Czech as well. Now I'm going to play a different fragment, which is from my own video course. When Czech stories are never better is focused on colloquial Czech. And in one of the stories, I am explaining why to was used in a certain sentence. Let's have a look at it. Když už se zvedám k odchodu, zvedá se fešný muž taky a míří si to ke mně. Mířit means to head towards, and it doesn't have to be there. Míří ke mně is just a dry way of saying he's heading towards me. But míří si to ke mně adds an interesting atmosphere to the story, as well as this word to. Míří si to ke mně. These two don't have to be there. You can just say míří ke mně. Míří si to ke mně. Can you hear the difference? Like mischievous way, like this man is about to do something and there is a little bit of suspense, like, oh, what is he gonna say now? What we heard was míří si to ke mně, and I told you that it just sounds better when we have to in there. The same way we could express something else. For example, when you are running or going somewhere, you can add to together with si. For example, běžím si to lesem, když najednou, which means, so I'm running through the forest when suddenly, you can fill in the blanks, běžím si to lesem, když najednou uvidím medvěda. When suddenly I see a bear. And again, you can leave these out, běžím lesem, and it's just not working. It's very dull. By the way, if you would like to practice colloquial Czech in context, feel free to check out my course, When Czech Stories Are Never Better, 1 and 2. Each course contains 15 fun stories that describe a funny situation or a dialogue, and I explain very well what's going on. And besides learning colloquial language, you will also practice cases and verb conjugation, etc. I'm going to leave the board for a few minutes, and I want to show you even more examples that didn't come from my head. I found them on the Czech Corpus, just to give you more context and how to is used. I chose a couple of sentences from the Czech Corpus, and we are going to read them, and here you have the English translation. There are fragments from different books. Co jsem to chtěl říct? To is right here. What did I want to say? Co jsem to chtěl říct? You could easily say co jsem chtěl říct, and it would be less colloquial. To vám to trvalo, kluci. Actually, you have to twice here. That took you guys a long time. To vám to trvalo. So which one is which? One of these to actually has function of a subject. It doesn't matter which, because it all depends also on the word order. We could say the first one is the colloquial one, and if we wanted to leave it, we would have to switch the order. So we would say trvalo vám to. Trvalo vám to. To víš, že to bude fungovat. You know it will work. So again, we have this to víš, well, you know. So in English we could add like, well, you know. To, abych přišel jindy. This one is interesting. Actually, if we want to leave it without to, abych přišel jindy, it's not complete. This whole expression is quite colloquial. It could be translated as I should come another time. So it's a reaction. When you see that you came at the bad time, you would say, to abych přišel jindy, co? Well, I should come another time, right? So if you wanted to change this phrase to being less colloquial, more proper, you could say, měl bych přijít jindy. Bude lepší, abych přišel jindy. It will be better if I come another time. To se určitě mýlíš. You are definitely wrong. Určitě se mýlíš. We could leave this out and start by určitě se mýlíš. Kdo to zemřel? Chtěl vědět. Who died? He wanted to know. Kdo to zemřel? We could say kdo zemřel and it's a full sentence. Co to prosím tě děláš? Prosím tě has a meaning of disbelief, like what on earth are you doing? Co to prosím tě děláš?
Co to prosím tě děláš?
Or we could just say co děláš? To si teda brzo vzhůru. Nemohla jsem spát. Well, you're up early. To si teda brzo vzhůru. Jsi brzo vzhůru. Also, teda is colloquial. We don't need to have it there. The proper version would be jsi brzo or even brzy vzhůru. Brzo is informal. And the last one is the longest sentence. Zamířili jsme si to po písčitý pláži směrem ke skalnatým útesům v dálce. And here you see to. Zamířili jsme si to. Just like the example with the grandmother and the man heading towards the woman. We headed down the sandy beach towards the rocky cliffs in the distance. So you could say zamířili jsme po písčitý pláži. You can notice I copied it as it was in the book. It's even written without the J. That's a sign of a colloquial language where you transcribe it without the J. But that's not how you write jsme, although you pronounce it like this very often. So if we add J, it would be more proper. So the proper version of this sentence would be zamířili jsme po písčité pláži směrem ke skalnatým útesům v dálce. Okay, and now we are at the end of our video. There is an exercise for you. 6 sentences which are relatively in a proper Czech except for a couple of words. And you can make them sound even more colloquial by adding to. I recommend pausing the video and work on these sentences on your own and then check in with me. One important note. In many of the sentences, you will have to move the word order around, and in one sentence, you have to take away one word and replace it by to. Hodně štěstí, good luck. And now, let's reveal the colloquial versions. So, the first one, máš pravdu, you are right, and by adding to, which would be right here at the beginning, to máš pravdu. It's more colloquial, to máš pravdu. Co jsi říkal? What did you say? What were you saying? Co jsi to říkal? We will put it right here. Co jsi to říkal? This one is interesting. Babička si štrádovala náměstím. Because štrádovat is a colloquial verb for saying jít. Babička šla náměstím. Štrádovat comes from German. So we added si as well. It's already there. And when we add to right here, babička si to štrádovala náměstím. It gives the sentence a certain personality because you imagine a grandmother who's, very adamantly walking through the square like this. Štrádovala si to náměstím. Neumíš pozdravit? Okay, it might be a little strange, but this is very common in Czech families when a child forgets to greet somebody. So they are scolded by this. You don't know how to say hello, you don't greet, and we say to neumíš pozdravit. Right here. To neumíš pozdravit. Ty seš teda pěknej blbec. Okay, this is slightly vulgar. You're such an idiot. Okay, you are pěknej means pretty, so you're a pretty fool. That's a literal translation. You're such an idiot. Also, seš is a colloquial version of jsi. Ty jsi. So what do we do here? We need to, and it would be at the beginning, but it would be instead of this one. To seš. Forma. To seš teda pěkný blbec. And the last one, nic si z toho nedělej. Don't worry about this. Don't make this a big deal. This one needs a little bit more work. So we would put to at the beginning. Then we would say to si z toho. This is number 1, this is number 2, and then this is number 3. To si z toho nic nedělej. To si z toho nic nedělej. A to je všechno. I understand that this might be a bit overwhelming for some of you, but I am not asking you to use this. It's very helpful when you watch a movie or hear authentic Czech in the streets, that you might hear to in certain phrases where you would not know how to translate it. So keep this in mind, that sometimes we take it as a sign of colloquial language. To that gives our expressions a beautiful colloquial personality. A to je ode mě všechno. This is all from me. Mějte se hezky a uvidíme se za týden. Čau čau.